To a flag, a leader, or an idea, few things are more important for a military than loyalty. But what about those who go against the grain? The defectors, double agents, and deserters who choose to aid the enemy instead of their own countrymen. In this video, we shed light on these so-called traitors and ask the question, can their decisions be justified? Enough talk about traitors though. Let's talk about purging them from your powerful World War II era nation. Call of War is a free online PvP strategy game that lets you choose a real country to lead during World War II. The scale of it is massive and you can fight up to 100 other players in real time in games that take weeks to complete. As a competitive World War II nerd, I love the idea of real-time PvP and outwitting the enemy. Declare war on your ideologically opposed neighbors and create the best armed forces and deadliest secret weapons to wipe them out. Another massive plus to this game is that you can play with the same account on both PC and mobile, catering to all types of players. By clicking on my link in the description below, you get an awesome gift of 13,000 gold and 1 month premium subscription for free. Only available for 30 days, so sign up now. Until the last years of the Soviet Union, one name had been scrubbed from the war record. Once a national hero, this man betrayed Stalin but claimed to fight for the Russian people. His name was Andrey Vlasov. Vlasov began the war as a lieutenant general and escaped the Kiev encirclement during the early phases of Operation Barbarossa. He then took command of the 20th Army for the defense of Moscow. The 20th made a series of vital counterattacks against the advancing Germans, and Vlasov was heralded as one of Moscow's saviors. In March 1942, Vlasov deployed to the Volkhov front and led the 2nd Shock Army in an ill-fated mission to break the siege of Leningrad. This was an operation of Stalin's own design, and it was full of holes. Vlasov's army was rapidly encircled and, facing annihilation, they surrendered. While waiting in Vinnytsia POW camp, Vlasov was visited by Captain Strickfeld, a Russian interpreter and aide of General von Bock. Bock wanted Vlasov to raise an army of Russians to fight alongside the Wehrmacht in the east. Knowing Stalin would have pinned him as the scapegoat for the failed Volkhov offensive, Vlasov agreed. But Hitler didn't like the idea, and it wasn't until September 1944, when Himmler stepped in, that Vlasov got his force. The Russian Liberation Army, as it was called, included 50,000 volunteer soldiers and fought on the Oder front in Central Europe as well as in the West. In May 1945, Vlasov was captured by the advancing Reds. He was found guilty of treason and hanged in 1946. Right to the end, he maintained Stalin was the true enemy of the Russian people. In July 1944, the Abwehr presented an Iron Cross Second Class, an award usually reserved for frontline soldiers, to their top spy in England. His codename was Alaric, and he operated a network of 27 spies throughout the country. But Alaric, his real name Juan García, was a double agent. A veteran of both the nationalist and communist armies during the Spanish Civil War, Pujol had never been afraid of jumping ship. While living in Lisbon, Portugal in 1940, he decided to do his bit for the war effort. Pujol wanted to spy for the British, the only government he felt was trustworthy. But on 3 separate occasions, MI5 turned him down. Realizing he was going about things all wrong, Pujol decided to make them recruit him instead, as a double agent. But that meant he first had to become a German spy. Pujol created a fake identity as a pro-Nazi Spanish official who traveled to London on business, then walked into the German embassy in Madrid and asked to be a spy. Unbelievably, the Abwehr agent agreed, giving Pujol a crash course in spycraft, a codebook, a stack of cash, and orders to move to England and recruit a network. Instead, Pujol moved back to Lisbon and wrote bogus reports with information from a tourist's guidebook to London. He was soon recruited by MI5 and industrialized his misinformation output, sometimes sending 20 reports a day. These reports were instrumental in diverting attention away from the Normandy landings as part of Operation Fortitude. But Pujol wasn't the only one making up crap on the radio. Over in Berlin, one American woman was doing her best to sabotage the US war effort. She was given many names, but was best known as Axis Sally. The real Axis Sally was Mildred Gillars, a 42-year-old failed actress. She was born in Portland, but traveled to Berlin to be with her fiancé, Paul Carlson, who was a naturalized German citizen. Unfortunately, Paul's patriotism for Das Vaterland got him conscripted and sent to the Eastern Front, where, predictably, he died horribly. While stuck in Berlin, Gillars got a job as a broadcaster with German state radio. Her messages were generally apolitical until propagandist Max Otto Keuschwitz got involved. He set her up with a radio show called Home Sweet Home, where Gillars spent an hour playing popular music and trying to convince GIs their wives and girlfriends were cheating. Despite the defeatist messaging, Home Sweet Home gained some popularity among the US soldiers fighting in Southern Europe. They coined the name Axis Sally and ascribed it not just to Gillars, but to any woman spreading propaganda on German radio. Reportedly, Gillars wasn't happy about this, wanting ownership of the title for herself. In August 1944, Keuschwitz, the brains behind the operation, died. The show became repetitive and Sally lost her touch. After a manhunt by US counterintelligence, Gillars was arrested and charged with 10 counts of treason in 1948. Her defense team argued she was under Keuschwitz's hypnotic influence, but the judge didn't buy it. She was imprisoned for 13 years. Spewing propaganda is one thing, but it's quite another to try and blow up your country's leader. That's exactly what Claus Von Stauffenberg tried to do. Klaus Philipp Maria Justinian Schenkgraf von Stauffenberg came from a family of Prussian traditionalists. He was devoutly Catholic and received a solid education before joining the army in 1926. He was initially drawn to Nazi politics by the allure of justice that democracy couldn't provide, but was disgusted by the Night of the Long Knives and Night of Broken Glass. He saw no justice in Hitler's actions, but wanted to remain loyal to Germany. While these thoughts festered, von Stauffenberg served in Poland, France, and Operation Barbarossa. It was in the East that he met fellow conspirators Helmut von Moltke, Peter von York, and Henning von Tresckow, some of the members of the anti-Hitler Kreisau Circle. Von Stauffenberg accidentally let his true feelings slip in a meeting, stating, "They are shooting Jews in masses. These crimes must not be allowed to continue." Believing he was defending millions against a madman, von Stauffenberg galvanized the conspirators and put an assassination plan into action. On July 20th, 1944, he entered Hitler's briefing room with a briefcase bomb. After placing it near Hitler's feet, he excused himself for a phone call and bailed. The explosion tore through the room, but Hitler survived, thanks to a heavy table. Von Stauffenberg was shot by the Gestapo 12 hours after the failed assassination. He knew his actions were treasonous, but firmly believed assassinating Hitler was the moral choice. Far from Hitler's lair, a young Japanese officer made the same choice as von Stauffenberg. Second Lieutenant Minoru Wada decided that by killing a few, he could save many, though he had to go against his countrymen to do it. Wada was studying in Japan when the war broke out. He came from an affluent family and had been brought up in America, far from the Japanese government's ethno-nationalistic rhetoric. He was made an officer, but his aversion to military life got him stuck in the Rear Echelon Transport Corps, a posting that suited him just fine. By 1945, even the transport officers were being ordered to fight, and Wada found himself in combat against US forces on the Filipino island of Mindanao. He was captured and interrogated by a US intelligence officer who was surprised when Wada opened up about his hatred of war. Wada declared he would be happy to do anything to end the fighting. Presumably, the intelligence officer raised an eyebrow and said, "Anything, you say?" Over a few days, the Americans convinced Wada that if they knocked out Mindanao's Japanese commanders, thousands of Japanese soldiers could be saved. The young officer was willing to help, but it wasn't as simple as drawing a circle on a map. The Japanese command post was so well camouflaged that Wada needed to guide the bombers in himself, which, on August 9th, he did. Wada sat in the radio operator's seat in the lead Mitchell bomber of Marine Bombing Squadron 611. Speaking through an interpreter and still wearing his Imperial Japanese Army uniform, he guided the squadron along a jungle track he recognized right to his own headquarters. The Mitchells dropped 22,000 tons of bombs, and their accompanying fighters fired some rockets for good measure. The command post was destroyed, and fighting on Mindanao ceased within hours. Major Jordan, the strike commander, commented, "The Japanese officer put us 0 on the target, and we did the rest. Maybe overdid it." Those were 5 stories of some of the Second World War's worst traitors. But what do you think? Would you turn your back on your countrymen if you felt you were fighting an unjust war? Is it more important to be loyal to the government or the people? Who do you think was justified in their actions? Let us know all that and more in the comment section below. Big thanks to Call of War for sponsoring the video. To play a free online PvP game where you can choose your own strategy and engage in epic battles to take over the world, sign up using my link for an exclusive offer of 13,000 gold and a 1-month free premium subscription only available for 30 days. Click the link in the description, choose your country and fight your way to victory.